Coming up on the booth review, Logan, too early to panic?
Maybe. Stay tuned to find out.
Oh, way to stay nice and calm. How about both sides of the ball here, Logan, needing a little bit of improvement? Will they find it?
I think so, and we're going to talk about it in the show today.
All right, that's coming up next on the booth review. Welcome into the post-long weekend Booth Review podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein with Logan Paulsen. We're brought to you by Microsoft Surface Copilot plus PC, and we are in the Big Bear AI Command Center studio. London is off this week. He's got things to attend to. He'll be back post the Raiders game. Logan, nice to see you.
Great to see you too, man.
How'd your weekend go? Good?
I mean, my weekend was great. Yeah, it was awesome. Got to hang out with the family. That's the nice thing about Thursday night games, man. You get a little bit of wiggle room. You know, you hung out with the wife a little bit, right?
I unplugged after Thursday. That was a rough one.
I still relax, yeah. I mean, Thursday was a rough game, but, you know, every once in a while you have one of those, right?
Yeah, rough for everybody. I mean, I think I want to start with injuries. Mm-hmm. You know, it's early in the season. We're going to go through the game, obviously, and there's a lot to talk about, you know, as they're going to have to clean up to move forward here. But injuries are really a predominant storyline to me, specifically Austin Ekeler. We haven't seen anything official yet. I think we all have read the reports, and considering what we saw and what we know so far, you know, the idea of him returning anytime soon, let alone for the rest of the season, feels pretty remote. So until they say that officially, we don't know. But that said, he's not playing this weekend and probably anytime soon. So it's a big deal, I think, losing Austin Ekeler. We'll go through some of this, but I think it's a big deal losing him.
I mean, of the injuries, I think that's probably the one that has the most ready-made solution. And so what I mean by that is you have Jerry McNichols, and people forget that he's been in the league for 10 years. And so one of the things that Austin you lose with him is you lose his experience, right? He's an experienced football player. He's got an explosive element to his game. And obviously you're going to miss that. And obviously we feel terrible for Austin. That's apparently a tough injury, and we'll get the confirmation later. But I think you got a guy in Jeremy McNichols who's an excellent pass protector who can kind of fill that third down back role. I think Bill Krosky-Merritt we saw against the Giants, and even against Green Bay, you saw an explosive, elusive, dynamic runner who can create and elevate the blocking surface, which is exactly what you want. And you have a guy in Chris Rodriguez who's a physical downhill runner. And I'm not saying they're not going to bring a third party in, but of all of the people, of all of the positions on the team that could sustain an injury, it felt like this was one that had a really nice depth piece to it because of the dynamism of Bill Krosky-Merritt, because of the experience of McNichols, and because of the power running style of Rodriguez. And again, Rodriguez, people sleep on him, but he's, a very efficient yards above expected runner, kind of traditionally, right? So I think bringing all that together, again, you're going to miss Austin, you're going to miss the explosive element, you're going to miss the strength, the experience, all those things. But I think you have three guys that can help offset that as much as possible.
The reports are Adam Schefter is saying Chase Edmonds is going to be signed to the practice squad. He's be his fifth team, drafted 2018, a lot of experience, and we'll see what kind of role he has.
Explosive guy.
Yeah, explosive guy. We'll see how it goes. But I will say this about Ekeler, and I don't want to downplay it. I think he's a big deal for their offense, for the yards after catch that he generates for them, the experience level, the tough yardage. We saw that early when they had the 3rd and 1 that turned into a 4th and 1 that turned into him getting tough yardage for them. This was never going to be a bell cow, offense for any running back. This always was going to be by committee, but his versatility and experience, especially in these tight situations, I do think will be missed. So I don't want to downplay any of that.
I'm not saying it's going to be. I'm not saying it won't be missed.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if there was a group of people that I think could offset it, it's the three guys we have in the room plus this addition, right? Because again, Edmonds knows Cliff. He's part of the system, right? There's some experience, some crossover there, so that's great. But again, McNichols as a third down pass protector is really good at that, right? We've seen Bill Krosky-Merritt, the explosive element he brings. And so again, does it hurt not having that in one ready-to-go package in Austin Ekeler? 100%. But I do think when you say, hey, the aggregate of these three people, maybe four now, can offset the loss of this, and then other people have to step up, obviously. But I think that's something that makes me feel not terrible. Initially, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But I think when you kind of step back and objectively look at the room, you kind of say, okay, we can survive this in a way that most other position groups on the team couldn't.
So as it stands now, Ekeler gets 5 to 10 touches a game, whether it's carries, catches, whatever it may be. That has to be disseminated somewhere else. Do you picture Bill getting 15 touches a game as opposed to 5 to 10 in whatever form that those come.
I definitely think his role expands. Like, there's no way it doesn't. I think you look at, again, the dynamism that he brings. We just talked about it, the explosive run against the Giants. And again, even some of the runs against the Green Bay Packers were really dynamic in terms of kind of getting skinny, finding stuff. So he'll definitely get more touches. It's just, how do you allocate those touches? Like, do you feel comfortable with him on third down? I would say probably not entirely yet, but that's where McNichols can come in, right? And then you have the depth piece with C-Rod. So I do think you can offset this again, and I think he'll get more touches. I think the aggregate of this will go somewhere else. I think Deebo Samuels will probably get some touches, on third down in certain pass catching situations. You mentioned the yards after catch. He's a nice, kind of replacement for some of those. So I do think you can offset it. It's going to take an aggregate kind of thing. But I think you've got some people that have played a lot of football in McNichols who've got some contact balance, some after the catch ability in Deebo, and you've got an explosive young player in Bill Krosky-Merritt, and I think you've got a really solid, consistent runner in Chris Rodriguez. So I think all those guys will kind of help offset what he brought, again, because he was a special football player.
To the point of the yards after catch, number 1 and 3 since 2021 yards after catch, Eckler, Deebo, both on this team. So it is a loss here. Offensively, to John Bates, we don't know. Groin injury, that's all we know. We don't know how long he's going to be out. John Bates is a huge part of the protection, huge part of the run blocking. How do you kind of foresee that? And again, we don't know if he's going to miss time or how much time he would miss.
Yeah, groins are always funny. They tend to be because they extend your hip and they abduct your hip, so they're kind of they're part of running and they're part of change of direction, so they can be a little bit finicky. To me, this feels like I know Austin Eckler is a more dynamic, explosive piece of the offense. This John Bates feels like a bigger issue long term for the team because there's nobody that has his direct skill set. So what kind of creative solutions do you provide? Do you get into these extra offensive lineman situations where, you have 12 personnel, but Trent Scott's the tight end? I'm just using him as an example to kind of offset the skill, the efficiency that John Bates brought in the run game, the physicality that he brought. And again, the thing about John that was so unique is that you could move him. He could do some stuff in space, which a lot of offensive linemen can't do. So
he can catch the ball. Yeah, they don't throw it to him very often, but he can.
Right, but I'm saying his value.
You throw Trent Scott out there,
it's different.
Your hand is being told.
But again, there are teams I think the Buffalo Bills are a great example. They run the most extra offensive linemen in the NFL. And the thing that they're able to do with some of that stuff is bring this physical pass protection first nature. And they're able to offset that with other pass catchers. So like with Austin, right, where you're kind of saying, if we make a collage of these 4 players, we can replace one. This John Bates, there's not a collage of players that replace. It's like there are some players that replace, but there's also a schematic identity that I think needs to accommodate him being out, right? Because of the unique process, the unique skill set that he brought to the position, especially in this building.
Okay, how about Noah Brown? Groin injury. Again, don't know. We don't know how long will he be out? Will he be out? We'll find out later this week. The downfield passing game is not clicking. It hasn't been happening really here early in the season. He is their clear number 2, 3, however you want to label him. We went through the summer where he missed a lot of time with the knee injury, and they were experimenting with other players like Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey, and they were trying to find answers on the outside if people weren't going to be available early in the season, and it was questionable whether they found those answers there. Now they may have to be without him for whatever period of time it is. This is another one that Cliff's going to have to figure out.
Yeah, this is a very tenuous, and I think the receiver depth has been tenuous since the beginning of the offseason when he's kind of been in and out. I think it was like the last OTA or minicamp practice where he kind of nicked himself up and he's been negotiating this knee injury. So we've seen kind of what the space looks like without him around, and you feel his absence in a dramatic way. And so I do think this is going to be significant. I think, again, this requires not just a personnel fix. I think, Luke McCaffrey did some good stuff in the last couple of minutes of the game, not just in terms of the catch that he made, but he ran a post late where he's wide open, did a great job getting downfield if Jaden's got a little more time and get the ball down there. So maybe he's ready for an expanded role. I know we've been talking about that for a while, but he feels like a guy that's going to take more touches, Jalen Lane, more touches, but it does feel like there needs to be a schematic shift to accommodate not having him if he's not around. So much like John Bates, it's just having a big receiver that's a downfield threat that has the experience that he has, it's just harder to replace. And that's one of the reasons why I said of all the positions, you kind of feel like Austin Eckler is the easiest because there's 3 dudes that can kind of get over his skill set. Like here, it's like, who do you go to? And nobody's really, especially during training camp, shown an ability to kind of fill that role at a high level. So to me, it says Cliff, put your thinking cap on. Can we get more touches for Terry, Debo, Zach Ertz in certain situations? Can one of the young guys step up? Do we have to shift who we are offensively a little bit? So I think that's going to be an interesting piece, him and John, to kind of see how they negotiate that.
I don't want to bury the lead. We all know that everyone's looking into what's going on with Jaden Daniels, and we don't know. The reality is we don't know what that is. As we're taping this right now, Dan Quinn hasn't spoken to the media today. He is definitively going to be asked about it, right? And we'll see what they say about it. Nothing really needs to be revealed or said until Wednesday when an injury report comes out. And then they'll make a determination of describing what the injury is and whether he participated in practice or not, right? So that's where we are just from a news perspective, and I don't know anything more than that. So I'm waiting to hear like everybody else. That said, hearing Jaden Daniels or seeing him limp around and wondering what his, what it looks like, this is the one that's really hanging out there that we can name all these people. This one's important. This one's important. This one's important. This one's it. Yeah. Right. If there's an issue going on here.
Yeah. And again, I'm probably more confident in this one because he finished the game. And if he wasn't limping around, I'd be concerned because of the amount of just body contacts he took in the game. I mean, you obviously called the game. How many times did he get hit? Running, sacks. It just was, there was a copious amount of body contact for him.
An unusual amount that I'm not accustomed to seeing with him. Typically when he escapes, he gets out of harm's way. He's very good at getting out of bounds or staying out of the hits of it, right? It's impossible to avoid all of it, but he's very good at that. That wasn't the case in this game. It was not.
I think we'll talk about Green Bay here in a minute, but I think that's a testament to them. But I do think if he wasn't limping, I'd be like, man, Tess, that man's pissed. What are we doing? You know what I'm saying? But he's a human being. We got to kind of handle that, right? So the thing is, I'm very confident that he'll be some semblance of okay. Maybe not this week, but the following week. And he's shown an ability to, based on, kind of his VR training, his walkthrough production, to kind of play games. Remember last year, I think it was the Chicago game where he was hurt. He broke his rib against Carolina, came back on a shorter week and then played. He's a tough, smart dude who knows his process.
And we found out after the fact that injury was worse than he had let on at the time.
Correct. And so
he admitted that in the offseason.
So again, what makes good trainers? Tough players. And he's a tough player. He's a smart guy. He finished the game. I think that's the other thing that gives me a lot of confidence. And even though he was banged up, I felt like he looked okay. Now, we'll see what Dan has to say, but I just feel like there's ways to accommodate him. And also, I trust Marcus Mariota. I think when he came in and had to play last year, he looked great. So I think that's one of the reasons why you prioritize a veteran backup like that, is so that if for whatever reason Jaden can't go this week, then you have a guy in the room who knows the offense, who's been very productive in this offense, who can get the job done. So is it concerning? Yes, but my level of concern, for whatever reason, I can't give you an exact reason why, finish the game, all those things, I'm not that worried about it.
I'm trying to stay cool over here.
Yeah. So usually I'm the guy that's worried all the time.
I know.
You're kind of, I feel like a lot of consternation from you over there.
I do. And I want to get into the offense with you in a bit because there are a lot of things here. Yeah. One, it wasn't clicking in camp. Mm-hmm. Two, now we're starting to add injuries to the equation here. In particular to primary position players who are starters for them. I agree with you about Bates. I think that is an enormous change for them.
But I think
he's not going to be out there.
I think the thing is you can solve the problem. There are even though it's not ideal, you can solve the problem. And I think that's the important thing.
This is a heck of a hand that Cliff's being dealt right now.
No doubt. But that's why you get paid the big bucks, man. Right. You know what I mean? You got to this is what makes a good offensive coordinator. It's ideally, yes, the what is it? The Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's. That's 100% true. But a good offensive coordinator can mitigate some of that and put this group whichever takes the field in a good situation, which is what I'm hoping.
And again, we're talking about this in the dark. We don't know who's available, who's not. Right. At this point, so it's hard for me to project out. Okay, what are we going to do? But I do want to revisit this with you. What do you think Cliff does under these scenarios, and how you think he tries to move the offense forward? In a little bit. There are two other injuries that should be mentioned. Trey Amos, like Jaden Daniels, finished the game. Shoulder injury, went out for a period of time, came back in. The one that obviously is very concerning is Dietrich Wise, who that was an ugly injury,
Yeah.
and that had the look and feel of this isn't good, and I am awaiting some kind of official word. He certainly is not playing anytime soon, and we are awaiting word to see what his season looks like.
Yeah, he's another guy that, again, like his experience, his role, his leadership on the team.
I thought he was the most underrated signing this team made in the offseason because of his experience and because of exactly what they needed him to do. And in week 1, he did it.
Yeah, 100%. But I do think you have some interesting pieces that could potentially replace, and also different methodologies to replace. And so when you look at Javonte Jean-Baptiste, I think he's been playing sneaky well, I should say. And then I think you have Jalen Holmes on the practice squad, who will probably be elevated now.
Yep.
And I do think the utilization of guys like Javon Kinlaw moving, I think people envision him playing anywhere from a 3 to a true shade, so kind of in the guard and center area. But he's had a couple reps where he's been playing a little bit wider, a 5 technique, 4-eye, that kind of thing. So can you get into some of those big personnels? Frankie Louvu to the edge? Are we playing a true odd front? Like, those are some ways, I think, to manage not having a guy with his experience and his strength. Like it was really, you could feel him. And you said like one of the kind of the sneaky underrated additions, and I totally agree with you. But I do think, much like the running back situation, there are pieces that you say,
Yeah,
I feel okay if they had to step in and play
well,
more
this is
minutes.
one of those where the depth, I think we kind of lauded that throughout the offseason, that specifically on the offensive line, specifically on the defensive
Right.
line, they were a far deeper unit. And so let's get the test of it. Nobody goes a season without suffering some injury somewhere. This is where hopefully that depth comes true. And I agree with you that the answer with him, and I felt this way from the get-go, that we're not looking at, here's the front 4, and those are the guys that walk out there
Right.
on every single. No, there's going to be a lot of creative packages with all of these different groups. We've just, unfortunately, had to remove what is a very, very good experienced player from the equation of the whole thing.
I think that's the thing, is the experience with both Austin and him, right? It's like, it's the intelligence, the reps that you've banked, you're not having to, and we're going to talk about this with Connerly in a little bit, like, as a young player, you have to earn I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. It's like you have to be burned to know that fire's hot, right? You have to make mistakes in order to get better, and they've already made their mistakes. And so like you can see that production. It's like, oh my gosh, look what a smart player. Yeah, they've played for 10 years in the league. So that's the thing that you're going to have to negotiate when you put those younger players, less experienced players in there.
All right, let's get into the game a little bit here. That's all the injuries that we've been dealing with, and we'll know a lot more as the week goes on. The offense taking on the Green Bay defense. I think you and I both agreed that coming in, the performance that the Packers had against the Lions really stood out. And I know it's week 1, and people will just automatically go, well, Ben Johnson isn't there anymore, and it's just going to be a different year for them. Go look at that roster. That was the second highest scoring team in NFL history that they completely shut down. I can't remember a time where I saw a game with them over the last few years where they didn't have an explosive play. Not one, right? And we saw that again in real time. I say this all the time. I don't know how you feel about it. It's not who you play, it's when you play them. That team, that front that Green Bay has here early in the season, and it's very early, they're playing as well, as quick to the ball as anybody in the NFL right now. And we saw it on Thursday night. And it was a carryover from that game on Sunday. It was one of the biggest concerns I had, knowing that our offense isn't quite where I think it's going to get to at some point, and they're taking on a team that came shot out of a cannon as the season began here.
Yeah, and I think, it reminds me a lot of like the Thursday night game last year with the Philadelphia Eagles, like where the speed of the front, the dexterity of the front is so much higher than anybody else you're going to see probably for the year. And again, we'll see how healthy they stay. But, they have we talked about this too, like a lot of first round talent along the offensive line. They've invested a lot of first round picks. I think it's like 6 or 7, something like that, in the front. And if you're
or top 3 picks.
Yeah.
I mean, they are traditionally a team that doesn't do a lot in free agency. This Parsons trade is very actually unusual for them to do something like that. They are a draft team. This is why they're the youngest team in the NFL. The majority of their players are homegrown for them.
Yeah, and I think you feel that. And again, they were a good front last year, and they needed something kind of the best way I heard it explained was like they had a lot of red chip players, like very good players, but they needed someone like a true blue chip dominant player, and they go out and get the second or third best player in football on the defensive side of the football in Micah Parsons, and you can just feel how that just tipped everything over the edge. You felt him on every single play, and it frees up, Watts. It frees up Van Ness. It frees up, Rashawn Gary. It frees up Cooper as a blitzer and a rusher, and you can rush 4, you can drop 8, or drop 7 and play Tampa 2 and play. That's the other thing is just the way they played their man coverage is something that I think will very rarely see the rest of the season. Is you get guys who are corners who are standing at 8 yards, feet in concrete. I'm not moving. My eyes are on the quarterback. I'm seeing through the receiver to the quarterback, and just knowing that the ball will not get over my head because the pass rush is so good. So we try to throw a free access hitch. Those guys can break on that thing because there's no risk of a double move. There's no risk of anything because they know that front can create pressure. And people say, oh, well, is our offensive line not playing well, right? And I say, well, like Penei Sewell, who's arguably the best right tackle in football, gave up 3 pressures to Micah Parsons on less dropbacks, right? So like in terms of pressure percentage, it's almost the same as what Josh Connolly did, which is crazy to think about, but that's the context you're getting here. That's how good that front is. And again, they might get nicked up. Someone might figure them out. But in terms of the feel of it, standing on the sideline, and in terms of the feel of watching tape, like that is a special group that you're not going to see for the rest of the year. I had a friend ask me like, oh, is this the formula? If someone figured out the Commanders, yeah, if you can invest 7 first-round picks in your front and have like a really dynamic, like maybe you got the answer there. But look around the league, what other front is going to be close to this? Even Philadelphia, when you watch them yesterday against Kansas City, you don't feel the same way that you do about this front.
Yeah, they traded Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark's a Pro Bowl caliber player.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a drop-off with Wyatt.
Yeah,
not in the first 2 games. Not in the first 2 games.
And again, he might. He's a young player. You never know how that goes. Like that's another one where the experience of a season with Clark.
People don't know who he is, but he also is a high draft pick.
I think it was
he's a 2 or a 3. Yeah. He's a high draft pick.
I think he was a 29th pick. Yeah.
Yes. Cooper, high draft pick. Rashawn Gary, paid because he's turned out to be a very, very good player.
18th overall pick. Like there's draft capital invested there.
Yeah.
Van Ness is a top 15 pick. Like they're like go across the board, man. Like Quay Walker is a first round pick.
That's right.
Like, he's a top 20 pick in the NFL. Like they look a certain way. They're long. They're fast.
Yep.
They're all combine freaks, right? They all, some people say, why wasn't Jaden able to run? Like, I'll tell you, I can't think of a team that has 2 linebackers that run some 4.5 40s that are big and long and can track people down like that.
Yeah, I mean, this was honestly one of the first times, when Jaden does his escape acts that he actually took body contact.
Yeah.
And secondarily, couldn't get away from them. I mean, this was one of he had 1 or 2 rushes or scrambles that ended up being what we've grown accustomed to with him, where he gets away, he beats somebody to the edge, and he turns something out of nothing, and then he goes out of bounds, and he stays out of harm's way. How many times in this game were the Packers standing there waiting for him, and he couldn't outrun them after the escape? This is a minor thing, but I think the field played a little bit of a role. There was a ton of people slipping. There was a lot. There was a lot of issues. Yeah. There was clearly a lot of issues with the field, and it obviously attributed to Austin Eckler's situation as well. But that's only a small part of this. This was the real first time that I saw a team that was ready for this when he was escaping, and he was incapable of doing the things that we had grown accustomed to seeing with him with his legs.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, every quarterback, Jaden though specifically, for the purposes of this discussion last year, quick pressures are fatal pressures. And I felt like there was a lot of quick pressures. Like Wyatt had a couple, obviously Parsons had a couple, Cooper had a couple, where it's happening so quickly in the backfield. And then the other thing too is I thought they had a really good rush plan where they're kind of bulling on one edge. They're coming high with Parsons. They're flushing him to his left. It looks like there's grass. They're looping a 3 technique out. They had a really good plan to kind of manage his pocket movements and keep him in the pocket. And so I think that's another thing. You got to give credit to Green Bay for the personnel, but also the scheme I thought was really good. And people say, is this going to be a problem moving forward? It's you look back at last year and you say, well, Pittsburgh gave them a hard time. That's how they rush. They have a very comprehensive rush plan because they see Lamar Jackson all the time, right? And you say, what about, and then Philadelphia too, right? And think about the quality and the speed of those fronts, specifically at the linebacker level. It's a different speed than most teams have in the NFL.
I think people, though, and I'll ask you this, because week 1, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau,
different.
Abdul Carter in a debut who wasn't actually on the field defensively, probably as much as he's going to be down the road for sure, made his impact on special teams. But you look at that group and you go, okay, they rushed for 200 and something yards. They had 400 something yards on them. That's a group that I look at least personnel wise, and go, that's as good on paper as you're going to get. And then they go against a different team, and yeah, that's a really, really, really good group that maybe doesn't have the namesake outside of Paulsen that some of these others do. They couldn't move the ball in this team.
So I'll tell you this, like one of the things that stuck out to me when I was watching film, get ready for Green Bay, is they have a little bit, it's not an undersized front, but a little bit smaller pieces on the interior, right? They've got guys that are like 305, 310, not Dexter Lawrence, 370. And what it does is it allows them to move laterally and penetrate so much more effectively, right? And then they have these kind of edge players in Rashawn Gary, and people sleep on Lucas Van Ness and his effectiveness. They can set like violently hard edges, and it just kind of bottles and murks it all up in a way that the Giants have never been able to do, in my estimation, right? They've never had that extra 3 technique opposite Dexter Lawrence that really, they have great edge play, right? They have great guys that can rush the passer from the perimeter, but they've not had that 3 technique opposite where you
and they have a constant rotating group of people that are standing next to Lawrence, and none of them end up standing out.
Correct. And like, so we just talked about Wyatt, like he had a bunch of really nice quick wins, you know, up the middle of the field. So you're getting this edge pressure. And so think about it. There's a couple times where Connerly is doing a good job creating width in the pocket, and Jaden can step up, but you're getting pressure on the interior, or you're getting a bull rush from Rashawn Gary on the other side, and it just condenses the pocket in a way. And you talk about some of the things that Jaden Daniels has to work on. One of them is just small pocket movement. And so there's several times where he's taking these big movements to vacate the pocket, and they're kind of, Green Bay's almost encouraging that response. And so as the season goes on, I think he'll get more comfortable. The offensive line will get more comfortable, but that front, they had a really good, great personnel, B, very good plan. And I think the other thing people sleep on is the second level speed of Cooper and Walker in that defense. Because you think about Zach Bond, like the last time I saw Jaden Daniels struggle versus a team scrambling, it was Philadelphia with Zach Bond, and it was Pittsburgh with Queen, right? Like guys that can really rip sideline to sideline and match his athleticism. The Giants don't have anybody at the second level of the defense that can do that, and they don't have a 3 technique that can rush the passer the way that Green Bay had a couple guys that could do.
All right, let me talk about the offensive line a little bit. Obviously, people see the rush. A good portion of it was 4-man rush, you know? A lot of the pressure came from that, and we're seeing the right side, and Josh Connerly is getting trial by fire for sure. I mean, welcome to the NFL. He got Brian Burns a week ago. He's going to get Max Crosby this weekend, and he had... of what I've seen so far, and I haven't seen the Raiders obviously play their second game yet, but like, because they're playing tonight, but that Green Bay group was as good as I've seen coming out of the gate, especially off of Detroit. Welcome to the NFL. So what would you say to Josh Connerly today as he's kind of getting his feet wet in his career here?
I'd say that's those are both tough outs, right? Yeah. And the thing, so obviously there's some technical things that I think could be improved upon for him, right? Some hand positioning, some hip positioning, some understanding your pass protection line, things that come with experience, right? We just talked about why it's important for why veterans are valuable is they've been burned by fire a bunch of times and they know these things. He's learning those things now. I think the one thing, if you're a fan of the Commanders, if you're a fan of Josh Connerly like I am, is that dude competes his tail off.
Yeah.
Like there's certain times like where you're watching a game. Like, did you watch the Giants game yesterday?
Yes.
Like where the tackle had like a total meltdown in the first quarter and they had to bench him. Like every once in a while you watch film and you say that guy does not belong in the NFL. Like he's not wired mentally the right way. And when I watched Josh Connerly, like he had a couple reps where he stones Rashawn Gary, where he stones Micah Parsons on 56 dropbacks. Like they're going to get some, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's the thing that really sticks out to me is the competitive nature of the individual is something you can definitely build around, right? You can build on moving forward. And so I think he's going to be a very good player. But again, he's got to work on, hey, this punch technique needs to be more locked in. My elbows need to be tighter. I can't overset my line versus good rush. That's the other thing is when you're playing what I would call like a top 10 player at the position. So Micah Parsons fits this mold.
Yeah.
Is they have a little bit of carte blanche to freelance a little bit more. So your traditional set, right? Your kind of normal kick set doesn't work as well because they have a two-way go. And most guys don't have that same luxury. So they're going to kind of be really disciplined, rush the outside shoulder, and kind of play by the rules in a way that Micah Parsons, TJ Watt when I was playing, or Von Miller when I was playing, didn't have to abide by in the same way. And so you have to kind of change what you're doing. And I think that's what he's getting to see here is that learning process.
I mean, I go through all these stats, and last week Brian Burns' stats were one of like 3 players to have 8+ sacks in the first 5 seasons of his career.
Yeah.
The other players are Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Micah Parsons is tracking towards the most sacks in his first, 4 or 5 seasons of his career. The next closest, like the person who has more than him is Reggie White.
Yeah.
Maybe the greatest defensive player in the history
Fletch,
of the NFL.
Right? Didn't Fletch say
he believes he's the greatest defensive player in the history of the NFL. Max Crosby is what? I don't know it offhand, but it's top 5, maybe the top 3. Sacks, pressure rate, win rate, all that stuff in the NFL over the last 5 years. He's gotten a tough draw. To start, he has. And, there's a reason why these guys have these numbers. They beat everybody, right? They beat everybody, but he's a rookie, and this is what it is.
I will say the thing about Las Vegas, see, I'm getting old, man. Can't remember where they play anymore. But it's just Max Crosby. It's not like there's a guy on the other end that you need to really be thinking about, right? In the same way, they've invested draft capital, but none of those guys have really. Yeah,
they have a top 10 pick on the other side. But he hasn't made the impact yet. Wilson,
I think is his name. Yeah, but he hasn't really figured it out, right? So you can. This week we kind of had to worry. We got Wyatt on the interior, we got Van Ness on the interior, we got Gary on the other side, we got Cooper blitzing the A gap. So even our slide rules were a little bit funny because I can't really give full commitment because this guy can rush the passer. Here it's like we can. This is the thing. This is the crown jewel in the front, and I think we can dedicate way more attention to him specifically as opposed to this front where it's like, hey man, we got 4 dudes who can win one-on-ones plus 2 linebackers who can beat a back. So that becomes a little bit more complicated than what Las Vegas should be presenting.
I don't want to just stay on Connerly here too. I mean, again, the Packers rushed 4 often. They faux pressured like they were going to bring more, but they often brought 4. This is a collective thing. It wasn't on one side.
No doubt.
It was a collective thing. So just overall, just your thoughts through 2 weeks and specifically last Thursday night on where the offensive line can improve.
Well, I think it's an important reminder that, I think Cliff Kingsbury wants to be a run first offense. And I think as we talked about on the broadcast, it felt like he kind of got away, honestly, from that core tenet. I think he could feel and I haven't talked to him about it, but I just in watching, felt like he kind of got away from that because he felt like the game was getting out of hand, even though it was a 1-score game late in the game, if I remember correctly. So what I would say is one way to insulate the offensive line is to run the football a little bit more, be a little bit more definitive with the screen game, be a little more definitive with the quick game early on, and be more patient offensively as opposed to getting into these heavy drop back situations early. And I felt like when you go back and watch the tape, it's a lot of very hard downs for everyone in the offensive front. For the backs, it's hard because it's obvious passing situations. We're in the gun, we're in empty, we're in 5-man pros. That's a lot. That's a lot of stress on that group. And so I think just getting back into a more normal game flow will help the coordinator. That's always one of the things Kyle Shanahan used to say all the time is this offense is built for 2nd and 8. We're not built for 2nd and 10. We can't do what we want to do. And I think we saw the efficiency this group had last week when they were able to overcome, when they're on schedule. They're devastating. They're impossible to stop. So I think that's something to keep in mind when reviewing this last game is the game flow was not great. And they put that group in a really high-stress situation, and I think you saw the result.
I'll focus in on Jaden in a moment. I want to talk about the offense overall, just in general, really through 2 weeks, and specifically, again, I think they caught a team who just is red hot, especially with that front. And you just have to watch that game against the Lions to go, this was going to be tough. This felt like this could be a low-scoring game that was going to be hard to move the ball. But part of that also, I think to be fair here is throughout the summer, the offense – didn't practice a lot together, right? There was a lot of reasons for that. Injuries, people going in and out. They didn't play much in the preseason. And here early in the season, I would describe it as I would say the timing's been off, especially in the passing game. It feels like the timing is off here. And I, for one, am not overly surprised by that, especially if you have a group that's able to get to the passer as quickly as this one did on Thursday night, that there's kind of no time to breathe. And the timing's been a little bit off. Do you think I'm onto something here?
I think you're crazy. No, I think you're pretty spot on, actually. I think that's really good analysis. It's especially in the pass game, it's all timing based. Offensive line in the run game, it's all run. It's relationship based. It's how you're going to fit this combination. And so the fact that it feels a little weird, or like what's the timing on this comeback, or what's the crossing right here?
The misses on the screen game. I know how accurate this quarterback is.
Yeah.
The misses on the screen game, the lack of like almost pinpoint accuracy, which I've grown accustomed to with him on a lot of these throws. Like, it's just kind of not there. The connection with Terry isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, which is
I'm not overly surprised, considering they didn't practice together a lot throughout the course of the spring and the summer. So there's a lot of this that I just kind of attribute to, I think it's going to get better. Like, I think it's going to take time, but I'm not surprised that we're having what I would call a slow start to the season in the passing game for a variety of reasons. Some of it is the opponents that they drew and the ability that they have up front. And some of it is, it just feels like the timing is just across the board is a little bit off for all these variety of things that are going on right now.
No, I'm with you. And I think, it's not a coincidence that the guys that with the most targets over the first couple weeks of the season are Zach Ertz and Deebo Samuel.
The players who were here throughout the summer practicing every single day.
Right. And because again, like you gotta trust their spot. You gotta trust the way they're seeing it, that it's the same way you're seeing it. And so I think, yes, it makes a lot of sense that there's going to be a little bit of a feeling out period, a little bit of trial by fire, right? In terms of on the job reps, which isn't ideal, but that's how it's going. And I do think it'll get better. And I trust that they'll find a way to, I said this to somebody recently, like one of the things about the NFL is everyone thinks, oh, you're ready for everything week one, right? Like that's when everything starts. But really you don't know the team and know like what you're good at until probably week 4, 5, maybe, in terms of what our true identity is.
I think that's the whole league.
No, and I'm not saying here, I'm saying that, but like when I played, it was
like,
the same
trust
thing.
me, they're up in Minnesota after what happened the first couple of weeks where their offense had one strong quarter of 8.
Yeah.
And probably going, what's going on here right now, right?
Yeah, no.
Like, this is everywhere.
No, it's true. And I think, I think that's exactly right. So I don't think this is like unique. I think it makes sense to your point, like all the things you just said. So, I think it's just going to take time, which I know a lot of people don't want to hear, but I think it's going to take some time to kind of feel everything out, make sure everyone's on the same page. But it'll click. I'm very confident it will, because the coaches here are very smart. Cliff's very smart. Jaden's a competitive dude. Terry's a true pro, and they're going to figure out this relationship and this chemistry, and it'll get on track here, I think, sooner rather than later.
I'm not surprised that the explosive plays they've had, Deebo Samuel and Zach Ertz, maybe less surprised by Ertz. Like, the one really good thing, that touchdown he scored was a run after catch that we haven't seen a lot out of him.
Old Zach.
This was old Zach.
Yeah.
This was old Zach. Like, this was one of the first times I've seen him make that kind of play from that far out, on a yards after catch moment. He's been noticeable. There is positives that came out of this. He has been noticeable that it looks like he is quicker and faster, and was noticeable throughout the summer than he was even a year ago. And I think it was really on display on that particular touchdown. He caught the ball at the 18-yard line, juked a guy, and got to the corner of the end zone and beat what we've described as one of the fastest fronts we've seen. That was a takeaway for me from him, that he's capable of that now. That looked like the guy we faced in Philadelphia 5-6 years ago.
And I think it's great play design, great execution, and so obviously they're capable of it, and it's great to see Zach making those plays. It's great to see Zach be uncoverable. He's running that corner, gets a holding call, running the choice route, wins on the route. Like, he's got the ability to do it, and like you said, he looks in great shape, and Jaden and him have this great chemistry, and I think that's something that's going to continue to develop, and is going to be a continued bright spot for this team.
All right, downfield passing game. It's been practically non-existent, really, through the first couple of weeks. I think that has a lot to do with timing. The few shots that they've taken to Terry McLaurin just haven't connected yet. He seems to be their best downfield threat currently. I think they have a couple of players that could develop into that, but he's the one currently. That's not happening. And in this particular game, did they take a shot down the field? I don't even remember.
They had a couple. They had a box fade to Terry. They're in that 3-by-1, and they're running the 2 outs, and he runs the box fade, and the guy's kind of in his hip, and I don't know if the ball gets completed, but like kind of to your point, like that ball is almost out of bounds or right on the white, which is kind of uncharacteristic for Jaden. You mentioned the one he missed week 1, and I just think I think the other thing too that we haven't talked about, you mentioned the accuracy. in the Green Bay game, like there was a couple times on the screens where there's a free runner and he's got to kind of shuffle his feet in a weird way, get the ball out. Like on this play, like there's pressure in his lap and the ball's got to get out a little quicker than he wants. And so I do think it's hard to. I'm sure Jaden would tell you he can and should and needs to be better. But I also think it's important to remember how affected he was. I think it was on 50% of his dropbacks. There was some type of pressure. And so like that's just so unsettling for a quarterback in terms of accuracy, in terms of footwork, in terms of mechanics, and I'm not making an excuse for him, but it's important to acknowledge the environment in which he's trying to do some of this stuff, especially in this game against Green Bay. So if you remove some of that stress from him, from the offense, and let's say the pressure rate goes from 50 to a more normal 25 or 30%, I do think the offensive efficiency will just naturally go up, right? I mean, that's kind of my thought in terms of the way he's going to see stuff and the way he's going to make some of these throws.
Do you think that this goes back to they've got to figure out something to help protect and give him a little bit more time in general?
I think to me the simplest thing is that if you look at the game flow from the Giants game is just stay relatively on schedule. Like look at the Bill Krosky-Merritt's numbers, look at Austin Eckler's numbers, like the rushing efficiency was there, right? We were able to kind of stay in these more manageable down and distances. And we talked about on the last booth review how they were in all these, because of penalties, they were in longer down and distance and they had to like work magically to overcome them. But I think when you look at last year and look at when they were at their best, it's like, hey, 3rd and 5 is a winnable down and distance for us, right? And when you look at the call sheet or like the down and distance numbers, there wasn't a lot of 3rd and 5s in the game the other day, right? There weren't a lot of them. And so that's where, to me, Cliff, that's where most offensive coordinators are at their best. So can we find, again, more efficiency on 1st and 2nd down, be patient with the run game, be patient with the quick game, be patient with the screens, those high percentage throws, easy completions for the quarterback. And I think you're going to see an offensive efficiency that we're more accustomed to. But again, like this defense, credit to them, they made it very challenging to do that. And I also think the game flow, which people forget about, makes it very challenging to do that sometimes for a coordinator. So I think all of those things, if they normalize a little bit and they're not revved up to 11 all the time, I think the offensive efficiency will get better.
Yeah, I mean, like in all likelihood, if I went back and watched some of the games from a year ago, you'll see some of the same mistakes, drops, misses, all this stuff. But they were hitting so many chunk plays in so many different ways. They went in the wash, and you just kind of forgot about all this stuff. So like when I'm rewatching the Green Bay game the other night, the drop / punch out on the Noah Brown,
big deal,
was a big deal because it felt like one of the few times that we were having these moments. And that's the biggest difference to me early in the season as opposed to last year where that ended up, of course it's a big deal when that doesn't happen, but it didn't feel like it was game changing. Well, I mean, and I go back to this moment and I go, man, if that completion occurred, it might be a completely different ballgame. They're going to probably get points on the board one way or the other, and the whole game flow changes entirely. But it's that one moment, and if you're hinging on one moment to kind of salvage it as opposed to all of the different times where they're like, they just wipe it off their shoulders and go, well, we're going to hit you again with this, and this. It feels completely different. And so, like, I rewatched it, and that play really stood out to me because I went, the game's different if that catch is completed.
Well, 100%. But also, even go back to the first drive of the game. They get to it's a 4th and 1, but it's a holding call, and it backs up, and it ends up being I forget, it was like a 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 11, whatever it was. But, like, they were in a position where they could go for it. Realistically go for it, realistically extend the drive, penalty pushes them back, right? Even in the 2-minute drive before half, they get a holding call or a false start, pushes them back, right? And then all of a sudden, after a run, you're now from 2nd and 10 to 2nd and 20 or whatever it was. Like, it's those moments, we talked about it after the Giants game, those penalties, those kind of misfires against better teams are going to be more impactful, and they were. And I think when you look at, again, when you go back and watch the Philadelphia games.
Because nobody's perfect. You're going to make mistakes. 100%. There's going to be drops. There's going to be, the defense makes a nice play. That stuff's going to happen.
But when you go back to the Philly game, like the margin for error is tighter, right? And so this felt to me like a Philly game. That's what it felt like for both the games last year, the playoff game and the first time we played them on Thursday night. Like just the margin for error was so small. The completion percentage was a little bit off. The timing was a little bit off. And like, because it's a grind. When you play good teams, it is an absolute grind because everything is more difficult.
All right, let's talk about the defense a little bit here. Green Bay was not scared to take shots down the field early and often. They didn't complete many of them. They did hit that one big one to the tight end Tucker Kraft, but They tried one to Matthew Golden that didn't hit. They had a penalty that took points off the board on the injury play to Jaden Reed. There was a ball that was a little late to Golden that might have been a touchdown that Amos made a great recovery, knocked away. They took a lot of shots. Were you surprised that they elected to go for this? I expected them to be a little more conservative early in the game because they were a little more conservative against the Lions, but that's not the way that they attacked this early in the game against Washington.
Yeah, I mean, they're smart. They probably did a little self-scout and said we can be more aggressive, and I think they were more aggressive. And, I think the thing is, like, talk about just a nice point of juxtaposition between, the Commanders offense and the Green Bay offense. Like, they did a great job of staying on schedule, very little actual straight drop back stuff, a lot of play action, a lot of misdirection from the backfield, a lot of motions to kind of set up and create different rush angles for the defensive line. It was and because they're on schedule the whole time. And obviously there's a couple situations where they're able to overcome, it was in the third quarter where there was a big penalty, then they're able to overcome it on a big chunk play or whatever. But I'd say on the whole, they did a good job of staying on schedule and staying in this game flow that we're describing. Like, with an efficient run game, there's some trickeration in there, some misdirection stuff, and then they're able to get some chunks. And really, if you look at it, that's the difference in the game. Like, down to down, I thought the defense actually played okay. But then you get to,
I agree, actually. If you rewatch, you're going to see a different story than probably on that side of the ball than what you probably remember from Thursday night.
Right, but like you said, like the chunk plays that the Commanders' offense weren't able to find, Green Bay's offense is able to find.
That's right.
Some of it's from...
And they had some serious near misses on players that were open.
Correct,
right?
yeah, absolutely. So I think that, to me, that's the story. I think you felt like a good, competitive, tough Commanders-style energy from the defense, especially on the rewatch. But I thought there were some things technically that Green Bay did that put our guys in binds. And that's what you're supposed to do as a good offense, right? Is put them in conflict in terms of vision, in terms of how we're fitting this run, in terms of my man-to-man responsibilities. And I think you see that edge created some explosive opportunities down the field.
Yeah. So. The other thing I'm sure, and the coaches are going to preach this because this is what they talk about, at least with us all the time. This team has not generated a turnover yet. 2 weeks.
Yep.
And in this particular game, I don't remember a play where it looked like a turnover was about to happen. So there wasn't like a dropped interception or tip balls at the line of scrimmage or a near fumble or anything like that. So what do you kind of make of ball is life, but it's just not happening right now?
I mean, it's one of those statistics that has a lot of variance to it, traditionally. And I think I think the other thing too that is important to remember is, like, on a short week, like, it's tough. It's tough to know exactly who Green Bay is at this point of the season. Because, like you said, in the Detroit game, they're pretty conservative offensively.
They were very conservative offensively, built a lead, and then all of a sudden, and let their defense, boy, were they confident in their defense, boy, were they right about it. For the first two games, to take on these two offenses off of what happened a year ago and to have the performances that they had.
Yeah, and so I think that's something that sticks out to me is just like when you watch that Detroit game, it's like, well, none of the stuff that they did against the Commanders they did against Detroit, right? It was a much different game plan, much different approach, and you could tell they kind of said, oh, well, we struggled versus these coverages versus Detroit. Let's put these plays in because, again, Detroit plays a lot of man. The Commanders play a lot of man. So in some ways, it was almost like a perfect short week game for them because they said, this is a team that plays a lot of man in Detroit. This is what we had a hard time with. How can we exploit more man-to-man coverage looks? And then they just bumped right into a team that plays a very similar defensive philosophy on a short week. So it was almost like just a power-up boost for this game. And so they could prep a little bit more. And for the Commanders, when you look at what they did against Detroit, you're kind of like, I don't see anything that's going to really make me nervous or make me, like anything that's going to challenge us in a way that we were challenged on Thursday night.
Yeah. It was the second week in a row. Like, again, it wasn't all bad. And I agree with you. In rewatching it, the defense felt different to me than what I felt Thursday.
Yeah.
It just felt like, because there's two long drives, and they scored on those. And there were these near misses where you go, this game could have gotten out of hand had he hit one of those bombs to Golden. Either one of them. Like either one of them. Or if that play to Reed counts as a touchdown. This is it feels like it would have been a very different game. I will say this, second week in a row, they really stood up in the red zone again.
Yeah.
They did it against the Giants, and they had one against the Packers as well. So that's a good sign for the defense. What I think is a more, maybe not after what happened in Dallas yesterday, but feels like a more eclectic offense in Green Bay than the one that the Giants are bringing. They were able to slow that down too.
Yeah, I mean, they were able to slow it down, no doubt. But yes, they were. And I think the fact that they have some kind of stick-to-itiveness, some grit, especially in the red zone, like that's a winning situation. You know, you always hear Fletch on the broadcast talking about, hey, in the red zone, if we can hold them to 3, in the red zone, if we can hold them to 3, if we can.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing that sticks out to me, it really is like just the explosive plays down the field and how like those are the difference in the game, right? So one of them's on a mental mistake apparently, and then some of it is
tight
just
end, the Kraft one.
Yeah, one's on a mental mistake, and then one, there's an offensive PI that doesn't get called, and again, Lattimore's being really handsy with him too, so maybe they're just letting him play ball there. But those, like if you just kind of step back and say, what's the difference between like why they scored backed up? It's that play. It's like it's a 56-yard like big completion to a tight end.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something to kind of maybe keep an eye on moving forward is how do you manage some of those missed opportunities from a mental standpoint. And again, I feel very confident that this team will handle it because, when you talk to Dan Quinn, that's something that like drives him is improving. And this is something else I just want to point out is sometimes these types of games, these types of mistakes are good that they happen in week 2. Because now we can say, hey, maybe this communication in our man coverage is too difficult versus a bunch. We can get this cleaned up a little bit. And so kind of seeing those pressure points now is better because it helps you build and grow and develop a defense that's more comprehensive down the road when the games, I want to say, quote unquote, matter more, playoff caliber games.
I feel like this is the second time this has happened. The first preseason game was, Dan Quinn said it, like this was a moment that he wanted to talk. I mean, I know it was all the backups. They didn't play the starters really, but he was not happy with the amount of turnovers, the special teams. Not turnovers, penalties, special teams mistakes, and they talked about it.
The second game?
The first one, Patriots game.
Patriots game.
He was open about it.
Did he say the second game? He said the second game, right? Or am I having a stroke? Yeah, the Patriots game. Okay.
Patriots game. Now we've got week 2 here, and I am trying to after the long weekend, remind myself they played a really good team on the road in a night game on a short week and lost.
Yeah.
That will happen. I can promise you, as good as Green Bay looked, they will lose this year.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to go undefeated. You will lose. And I'm trying to remind myself of that. And I think that's...
It is early, too.
It's very early.
Yeah.
It's very early. Like last year in week 1, Washington played Tampa. That game was not particularly close. There were a ton of deep play touchdowns, big chunk plays that really made the difference in the game. Jaden was running for his life, just like in this one, running for his life. And guess what happened a few months later when they played them again?
Yeah.
So it is very, very, very early here. But this one felt more closer to me like the Baltimore game a year ago, where I'm not sure that the scoreboard is as indicative of how lopsided at times that this thing actually felt on Thursday night. But it doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a rebound from it because I saw it from this team a year ago.
Right.
It goes back to what we talked to in the beginning. I'm a little concerned about the amount of injuries that came out of this, especially early in the season, and a couple of them are season-ending or likely season-ending injuries. So that worries me a little bit here too. But it is very early, and I do think that team that they played is very, very good.
I agree with everything you said. It's early, team's good, and again, you want to win every game, but you're not going to. And so I think the only thing that would make this bad is if you didn't learn from the mistakes you made in this game.
Yeah.
Like if we didn't learn from, some of the things we had from a coverage standpoint, or we didn't learn kind of managing game flow as a play caller to make sure that we can be patient in certain situations. And I'm not saying that Cliff or, Joe called a bad game, but these are all learning opportunities for everybody, for the players, for the coaches. And again, if you can take this game of a good team and say, okay, this is the standard of play that we need to get to where we want to go, which is ultimately the Super Bowl, then it's not a loss.
Yeah.
It's going to make you better down the road, which is ultimately the goal every time you step on the field in between the lines. And I think kind of that's what you're speaking to is like, you want to win every game. But if you are going to lose a game, I feel like that sometimes is the best way to learn and improve yourself moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that Tampa game happened in week 1. That Cincinnati game happened in week 3.
Yeah.
Things can change very, very, very quickly. And I think you just saw this with the Lions, who played the Packers in week 1, didn't have an explosive play, and just put up 50-plus on a team a week later. So things can change very, very, very quickly. How many points did they score?
Do you remember the score of that Detroit game? What was the score? It was like
27-13, and the touchdown was garbage time touchdown. That guy who made a crazy catch.
Yeah.
It was 27-6
for a long time, right?
For the whole game. They couldn't get an explosive play. All right, I want to go back to the offense just for a moment. Okay, if you agree that timing is something that they need to work on, and there are now a number of injuries that may or may not affect what they're looking at, coming up this weekend. We don't know with Noah Brown. We don't know with John Bates. I think we do know with Eckler. We don't know with Jaden, honestly. Like, what do you think Cliff Kingsbury's thinking about this week as he tries to, take what is now a very different hand than he was dealt a week ago and moving forward and trying to find some chunk plays, explosive plays, and points with this team?
I think that's the one thing about Cliff and this offensive staff. They're a bunch of smart dudes. And so I think you just kind of go to the first principle of like offensive play calling, in my opinion, which is like, how do we put the guys in the best position to be successful? And then how do we put the team in the best position to win the game? And so maybe I want to shift kind of my focus. Maybe it's more conservative. Maybe it's more aggressive. But I'm going to talk with Dan. I'm going to talk with Joe about how they feel defensively, like we can handle against the Las Vegas Raiders, and kind of go from there. And like that, I think, is going to inform the direction. If I was the offensive coordinator, the direction I would go with some of my decision making, right? So like maybe we can't be in as much 12 personnel as I wanted, or maybe we do have to go big. What does that do to the defense? What's the response going to be? All those questions are going to be answered, but it's really, how do we put the guys in the best position to be successful? And then how do we make sure the team's winning this football game? Because shoot, if we score 7 points and they score 6, we still win. Like,
that's right.
That doesn't feel very good offensively, but we won the game. And then we can work and build and continue to grow and teach in an environment that is a little bit more.
The Rams beat the Texans 2 weeks ago, 14-9. No one's complaining about it.
It's a win, man. Win's a win.
Win's a win. All right, let me talk about the Raiders with you for a moment. Okay. I saw a little bit of the Patriots game. Obviously, you guys were taping this. They haven't played their second game because they're playing tonight. Washington is catching a break here. In the past, this has always been the opposite, where the short week stuff has always gone seemingly against them. Washington played Thursday. They're playing Monday night. Yeah, they're playing Monday night and taking their second East Coast trip in 3 weeks. Yeah. So the schedule's not friendly to the Raiders here for this game this weekend. Assuming you haven't seen a lot of them, I do want to ask you about two of their prominent players. I'm sure you scouted the you-know-what out of them. Ashton Genty. Like, what did you think? Like, what's the high-end ceiling for him coming out of college, coming in here?
High-end ceiling. He's a baller, man. He's an absolute baller. He's fast. He's explosive. He break tackles. He maximizes dirty runs. He has not done that so far through 1 week, the one game I've seen, because they're off. To me, like, this is the classic like offensive line or running back situation in terms of improving the run game. They're a little bit kind of land of misfit toys along the offensive line. I think you feel that with Ashton Genty, and I really like the number one driver of their. And I think in a perfect world, Pete Carroll would have him be the number one driver, kind of like your beast mode Marshawn Lynch type player. But I do think that right now Geno Smith is playing really good football, or at least from the game that I've seen this year and watching when he was in Seattle. So I think that's something that is going to be really interesting to watch, because they do have a guy who's willing to push the football down the field and can find explosive plays pretty consistently. So how do you manage that aggressive nature of Geno Smith?
Yeah, since you do 8,000 interviews a week and will have to deal with me on the pregame show this weekend, and off of what Tucker Kraft did, I think you are going to get asked 1 million times about Brock Bowers, who had, if it was up to me, Jaden Daniels Rookie of the Year, he would have been the second choice.
For a lot of people, yeah. And
after he broke a record last year for like tight ends as a rookie ever. He is a dominant pass receiving tight end. So what did you kind of see out of him, and what do you think
we'll see. He tweaked his knee week 1, and so he didn't practice this week. He's been in a knee brace. So I'm really kind of waiting to tonight to see like where he's at. Because sometimes people play that game where it's like, oh, I'm going to play, but I don't actually play. Like, how are they going to save him? Is he going to be ready for this week? And because he's such a movement piece in the offense, and his ability to win one-on-ones kind of in the same way Zach Ertz has that ability, it'll be interesting to see like where his health is at, because he is a big feature of the offense. Again, talk about just a weapon for Geno Smith.
Yes.
But Mayers, I don't know how to say his name, the guy from Notre Dame from a couple years ago, got a little bit more target share like when he was out. So they do have very good depth at the tight end position there, and I think that'll be a factor, obviously, in the game.
All right, last thing. Like, you played for a long time. This was a rough game. Like, what's important in the locker room? What are guys talking about? Is that because it's early? So what are people talking about?
I mean, that would have been my first thing to say, is that it's early. Like there's so much time to make this this correction off this game, right? So I was thinking back in 2012 when we made the playoffs, like we were 3-6, right? So we were definitely staring down the barrel of everyone getting fired and me having to find a new job and going back to school and all that kind of thing. But you figure out your rhythm late in the year. We talked about knowing who you are, knowing what you're good at. And we, in that season, just kind of clicked at the right moment. After that bye week came back, felt really good. And this is a mini bye, time for self-scout, self-evaluation. And I think, again, like if this is later in the year, it's harder having a loss like this because you're like, man, we're so established. We're so deep in it. Like, how do we make any type of correction? How do we get better? Here it's like, man, it's the season is still in its infancy. We can make any type of change we want. We can change our offensive identity at the drop of a hat if need be. As long as it's in the context of the install, we can change defensively what we want to prioritize. This is nothing. This is happening at the best time. And if this locker room is wired the way I think it's wired, they're going to come together. They're going to galvanize. Leadership's going to take over, and they're going to improve. And I think about Dan Quinn, I think about Joe Wood Jr., I think about Cliff. Like, that's what they're good at, is motivating and inspiring in a locker room. And I'm just grateful that it's happening now. I'm grateful that we played a good team now. So we know where the bar is, and we know how to get there when we have to get there.
Yeah, I mean, early in the season last year, they played a few good teams early. A couple of the results were really good. A couple of them went the wrong way. Look where they were at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So let's see if they can get a bounce back when they are taking on the Raiders this weekend. That'll do it for the Booth Review. We'll have a review of that next Monday after the Raiders game. See you then. Booth Review was filmed at the Big Bear AI Command Center studio. Big Bear AI offers mission-ready AI for a rapidly evolving world, proudly protecting the Washington Commanders and its fans.